Okay, so this video is about the mechanism underlying the dye-sensitized solar cell, also referred to as the DSSC. But before I actually go into the mechanism of the DSSC per se, I'd like to take a few seconds to talk about my learning objectives in this video. Firstly, I would want to relate the activities that we did in the flipped classroom, both the out of class and in class, to what I'm actually going to present in here. And I suppose this link calls to mind the recall level of the Bloom's cognitive hierarchy. The second thing that I intend doing here is to actually give the mechanism of the operation of the DSSC, and this I suppose would be the understand level of the Bloom's cognitive hierarchy. So before actually delving into the mechanism per se, a very quick look at the fundamentals of DSSC. A DSSC is a low-cost thin-film solar cell where essentially a semiconductor in the form of nanoparticles is held in between the photosensitized anode and the electrolyte. And this essentially forms a photoelectrical system. The DSSC is also called a Kretzel cell in order to honor the contributions made by Michael Kretzel, because he was the first person to construct and talk about the chemistry underlying the operation of DSSC. So what we basically need here is an ITO class. The ITO class stands for indium tin oxide class, and as the very name indicates, this contains indium, tin and oxygen. So what we have here is a glass substrate onto which a layer of silica has been applied, and on top of this silica layer there is a thin coating of ITO. The reason why ITO coating is generally done on glass and why this is used for the construction of DSSC is, the reasons are threefold. Firstly, it's because of the good electrical conductivity of ITO. Second, it's because of the optical transparency of ITO. And third, from a practical standpoint, applying a thin layer or obtaining a thin layer of ITO on glass substrate is rather easy. You just need to go in for a physical vapor deposition process and you have a homogeneous thin layer of ITO obtained on your glass substrate. And this slide here shows the same image of ITO obtained on a glass slide, and without taking much time you can actually see a rather homogeneous distribution of ITO nanoparticles on the surface of glass. Okay, so this is what I intend to cover in this video, the mechanism of dye-sensitized solar cell. But as I mentioned earlier, what I would want to do here is take you a few slides ahead and very quickly recall the thing that we did in the flipped classroom activity. What we essentially did here was we talked of the construction of the DSSC cell, and for that we needed of course an anode, a cathode and an electrode. The anode here is the titania coated ITO class, the cathode here is the graphite coated ITO class, and the electrolyte here is the iodide triiodide couple. So very quickly, first you look for the conductor side of the ITO class by attaching the leads of a multimeter, and then you prepare a slurry of the titanium dioxide powder using dilute nitric acid, and then you make a sort of well on the surface of the ITO glass by using scotch tape, and then you apply your titania paste over here, and then you sinter this, as in you heat this on the surface of a hot plate for 3 to 4 minutes, and then when it has been brought to room temperature you immerse it into a solution that contains essentially anthocyanin. So for that, in the fifth classroom activity we made use of blackberries, but you could actually go in for blackberries or raspberries or strawberries or just about any natural dye which contains anthocyanin. So this takes care of the anode part plus the dye solution over here. Then we need the cathode, for which you need an inert electrode. So we go in for graphite. You just scratch the conductor surface of the ITO glass with your pencil, and then you have your cathode ready. And the last part is the putting together of these two electrodes. You make use of your binder clips, and you make sure that you go in for a vertical offset for two reasons. Number one, you need to attach the multimeter leads, and number two, you still need to introduce the electrolyte over here. So once you have done this, you attach the multimeter leads, and then depending on the light source that you have, you get different amount of current or voltage passing through your cell. So this is what we did in the flipped classroom, and now I want you to relate this to what I'm going to talk to you about. So this two green slabs these two green slabs that you see here are the glass slides, the neat glass slides. This small gray block and this small gray block over here, this is the ITO layer on your glass slide. So this ITO coated glass along with this titania layer, this is your anode over here, and this graphite coated, this is platinum over here, but we go in for graphite because graphite is much cheaper than platinum. So this graphite coated ITO glass is your cathode over here. So adjacent to your titania layer is your dye. So in this setup, our dye is a ruthenium photosensitizer, ruthenium complex. So what actually happens over here is you shine light upon your dye molecules. Electrons and the dye molecules get excited, go to the excited state. These red dots that you see here, those are the dye molecules. So the electron from the excited state of the dye molecules jump over to the conduction band of titania, and from the conduction band of titania they go on to the anode. From the anode, these electrons travel to the cathode. That is an external circuit is set up, electrons travel, which means current is flowing in your cell. So how do you depict this in the form of equations? So I said dye. So instead of saying dye, let's just call it a photosensitizer. So I said light is shined upon your dye, H nu, light shines upon your, H nu is shined upon your photosensitizer, get excited. This excited photosensitizer loses an electron and forms S+. It is this electron that jumps from the dye layer to the titania layer, and from the titania layer to the ITO layer. From here, and then on to here. So in this process, what we essentially end up with is S plus moiety. Now this S plus moiety wants to go back to its original state, that is S, and for that to happen, it needs an electron. And that electron comes from this iodide triiodide redox mediator. Iodide moiety loses an electron to form triiodide. This electron lost is taken up by S plus, and then it goes back to its ground state, forming the photosensitizer in its ground state. I said iodide loses electron to form triiodide. Now this triiodide wants to come back to the iodide moiety state, which means it needs electron for this half of the cycle. This electron comes to the triiodide moiety from the cathode, and the electron at the cathode comes from the electron that has been traveling from the anode to the cathode. So in order to capture this electron, triiodide moiety moves towards the cathode, takes up the electron, and again forms iodide moiety. So as you can imagine, this is a cycle that happens rather continuously in your dye-sensitized solar cell, and as long as you shine light upon it, this entire process is going to go on unhindered. Of course, there are other factors that are important for the efficiency of the solar cell, but we would not be covering that in this video. So my basic intention here was to give you the mechanism of dye-sensitized solar cell, which I suppose I have been giving you for the past 2 or 3 minutes. And what I also wanted to do was to relate this mechanism to the construction TPS that we did as part of the flipped classroom. So I suppose in conjunction with the flipped classroom activity, this mechanism of the dye-sensitized solar cell, which we have talked about in this video, would be rather easy to understand. So that brings me to the end of this video.